Morning, everybody, and welcome to another Tuesday morning with Mortgage Coach. Every Tuesday, we're here to help you take how you do this business to a new level. Go from how you were doing business in 2007 and help you be a modern mortgage professional and sell like it's 2017. So my name is Dave Savage, CEO of Mortgage Coach. I'm always looking for amazing people to interview. Sometimes I'm interviewing a speaker, a coach, some type of leader who's not actually originating loans. And sometimes I'm fortunate enough to find someone who's actually originating loans. So today I welcome Joe Polizzi to the call. Joe, how you doing, my man?
Very good. How are you?
Good, good. Well, it's incredible to have you in our community. I remember when I first started working with RPM, I was told that, hey, Joe's our number one producer. He's probably not going to use Mortgage Coach. He's killing it. He knows how to do this business. Everybody else is going to use it, but don't try to get Joe to use it. So it's awesome to be interviewing you for the Mortgage Coach community today.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So hey, before we rock out the interview, I do want to remind folks that this call is being recorded. Also want to remind you, if you're a coach, if you're a mentor, if you have a team, our YouTube channel has some of the best sales training content on the planet. And reminder, I recently created a new loan officer playlist. So some of the videos that are the best for a new loan officer, put them in one playlist so they can just click it, go through the training. And if you haven't watched those videos, they're available and they're great for everyone. So I also want to remind folks that last week we announced the winner for the Referral Magnet Contest. Joe, this is a contest where we have a lot of members that they're creating videos for realtors and past customers. And we had a contest who could create one that would generate the most leads of people calling up saying, hey, I want a mortgage coach, total cost, well, not mortgage coach, I want a total cost analysis. Can you help me? And Jenny Stoner with Fairway won the contest. Our marketing team is currently working with Jenny to help her make that video even better and package it and market it on Facebook and social. So stay tuned for that. Also, I'm going to be announcing another winner in 2 weeks. So anyone that didn't participate in that, I think we have almost 30 people who have submitted videos for this contest. It's not too late. We're going to announce another winner where we spend $100 in Facebook marketing to help you promote it. So if just because you didn't win it last time doesn't mean you can't win it this time. So check that out. Also want to remind everybody, every single Friday we do a mastermind on how to just make more money in less time as a mortgage professional. So Building Champions coach Todd Bookspan joins me on that call. We facilitate a mastermind, so don't miss that call. So with that said, Joe, let's get into a full interview with you. This call is all about you. Anybody that is on this call and you have a question for Joe, just put it in Q&A, and I will bring that into the conversation when it's appropriate. And if you raise your hand in the GoToWebinar control panel, I can unmute you at some point, and you can ask the question yourself of Joe. So Joe, why don't we start with, what markets do you serve, a little bit about your practice and the production that you do.
We serve the Bay Area, although we do have a fair amount of business in second home areas, Tahoe, Napa. Majority is the East Bay, which would be Danville, Alamo area, east of San Francisco.
Got it. And tell us about your team and your production, so we've got a feel for your practice.
We've done about 140 units year to date. I've got an assistant, Nicole, who handles most of my business, and direct assistant would be Nicole. Then she has an assistant that helps her with the day-to-day tasks.
Got it. And last year, how many loans did you do?
I don't know units. I think it was over 300 plus, with about 182 million. It's strange. This year has been, as my business has changed over the past 3 or 4 years to where I'm doing units more than volume. A lot of our business is first-time buyers, which is fantastic because obviously those people are going to continue to buy. So it's changed a little bit, but an enjoyable change.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to talking a little bit about that. So again, folks, we're talking to a leader here who did over 180 million in production last year, over 300 units out of the East Bay, Northern California. Team of two, so assistant and call it two assistants. And then where's most of your business coming from? What are your primary sources of referrals and business?
Well, it's probably a majority of it is just past clientele, and then realtors.
Got it. And how many realtors do you get referrals from on any given month?
I've always handled real estate agents as kind of like a stock portfolio. So, we have probably 100 agents, and at different times, different agents are very hot, right? So, I would say in any given month, probably 60% of our business to 70% of our business comes from agents, but those agents can differ dramatically. We'll have people that get super hot for 2 to 3 months and then, don't hear from them for 6 or 7 months. So it really varies, but all in all, it's just a large group of established agents, and we're doing a really good job as well since we're penetrating that first-time buyer market of new agents, which helps immensely because not only can you essentially train a new client in terms of the understanding of what we do, but also you can train a new agent, which really solidifies your relationship with that person.
Love it. Love it. Well, to do that kind of volume and to, get, I would imagine a lot of past customers are referring you business on a regular basis. Let's talk a little bit about some of your challenges this year because, while you're killing it, what challenges have you had this year?
I think the biggest challenge, and most independent people will tell you, it's kind of the change of when a big bank decides to really get into the market in terms of pricing. So I've probably lost more jumbo deals this year just simply due to pricing than probably ever. It took me a while to kind of stomach that. I think 10 years ago I wouldn't have been able to stomach it, but of course as you get older it's a little bit easier to understand things and be more patient with life. I think in that instance I realized that you can't. The way that this market's changed over my career is you can no longer be everything to everybody, and I think once you grasp that, two things happen. Number one, you sleep better, but number two, you realize maybe what opportunities are there that you probably hadn't uncovered before. And I think that's, as you mentioned, how you basically nicely said that I was stubborn when you first heard about me, and that's true. What I've realized is that with my implementation of Mortgage Coach, it opened up a market that I felt was underserved, especially in our area, and really a market that, depending on how long you've been in this business and what your tastes are, a market that I've really enjoyed. I mean, I've always enjoyed coaching or teaching or things of that nature, and you're not really coaching someone that's simply shopping for an interest rate with 15 different institutions, but you are coaching or teaching somebody that really needs guidance. And I think I found some level of self-worth in this business by changing what I do. And I think Mortgage Coach has been a big part of that because it's allowed me to do that with less stress, and frankly allowed me to do it more effectively. It's allowed me to do it with easier illustration, easier implementation, easier understanding, and I think it's bridged the gap between someone that's new that doesn't understand terms and product, and someone that's been doing this for a long period of time, that gap is hard to bridge for each of us, right? I think anybody's been doing, this is my 25th year or 26th year, you get somewhat jaded in terms of explaining the same thing over and over and over again. And this has really been enlightening to me, because it's allowed me to realize, what people really want is some level of guidance at some point. And it's been a good transformation for me.
Yeah. So what was it where you decided? Because again, you're incredibly successful. You're doing a lot of volume. Where you decided, hey, I need to start using Mortgage Coach. What was the kind of some of the triggers that got you to do it? Because all I know is I got a Facebook message out of the blue from you, which is like, hey, Dave, you won't believe it, but I'm using Mortgage Coach and loving it. What was it that created that and caused you to take that action?
Well, I sat back and I looked at, so my personal situation has been, I wanted to do this until I was 50 years old. And I turned 50 years old, and then I decided I want to do it. I have no other marketable skills at this point in my life, but I wanted to do it differently, and I wanted to completely enjoy what I was doing. And when I sat back and really looked at, what was I getting out of this business? I mean, obviously, we do this for a living, so it's a job. But when you're fortunate enough to have it as a job, but also have something that you enjoy doing, it got to a point, I think, for me where, I was tired of doing all this work and having somebody leave you for an eighth because they saw something on bankrate.com, or arguing with them, or fighting with it, or doing. It just got to a point where I'm like, how do I just enjoy myself a little bit more in what I'm doing? And at that point, I just sat down, and Nicole and I sat down and said, where are we succeeding and where are we failing? And the whole thing has always been, this drive to be, I've got to do this many or this much or that, and it was really always kind of volume driven. And I know this may sound strange, but I haven't looked at, you asked me the question and I gave you roundabout figures, because I haven't looked at my production level in about 3 years. I don't look at pay stubs. I don't look at anything. What I look at is really try to get a gauge of units, because what I've determined is over time, and I've always kind of determined this, but the more people that I touch, the more you said, what do you do for marketing? It's just that, when we get these 5-star reviews, which we get almost every single time as we send out a review, that was what I was trying to achieve. Because those people, the way my relationships with them go through this process and end, that really got me to a point where I realized, okay, this is a niche I need to concentrate on, because maybe I have to do 3 loans to get to that million production number, but those 3 loans, frankly, are easier, the clients are more appreciative, and I'm happier when I'm done. So, I think that combination pointed me in a direction to where then all of a sudden, if you're unit driven, how do you do as many units as possible with the most efficient workflow? And I think that's when I started to, I went to, I think David was in Sonoma that we were there, and there were a couple RPMers were up talking about Mortgage Coach. And it was really something that kind of, I was at the end of the year, or the beginning of the year, so it was the direction that I was, taking to go into 2017. And it was really like, when I started listening to it, I'm like, that's exactly kind of a tool that would help me do what I'm trying to do for the next stage of my life. And so it just, kismet, right? It happened when I needed it, and it's worked out well.
Love it, love it. Well, let's walk through your perfect loan process, because any process that's winning this level of business, I'm sure you got a great conversion rate. I know that you have a great 5-star rating reviews, and you're just doing a whole lot of volume. And you know, while you have a team, you don't have that big of a team. So I mean, I really want to unpack that. You know, we positioned this call of, you know, the perfect loan process for teams, and I know you're tweaking it. Like, you added Mortgage Coach to your systems this year. You know, you earlier when you and I were syncing up, you had mentioned how you tried some things. But walk us through right now, what is a perfect loan process? And I'll ask some questions as we go. And then again, I want to remind the audience, if you have questions for Joe, we built this conversation so that we'll have time to field your conversation. So any questions for Joe, throw them into GoToWebinar or raise your hand, and we will get to them. So go ahead and walk us through your perfect process, Joe.
Well, my perfect process would start with someone actually coming into my office and meeting with me, because I enjoy that old school type of feel, where I'm actually meeting somebody. But as you and I had talked about frequently, Dave, you know, I mean, I think this world is changing, and you know, specifically like in the Bay Area, and I'm certain in other parts as well. You know, it could take 2 hours to get to my office. So I understand the ability, you know, the advantage of not having to meet in person. But a perfect loan process was, I meet in person. My first part of my meeting.
Time out. What percentage of the folks do come into your office when you think of all the?
I would say about
30%. Okay. And how? By the way, how hard do you push before you just like?
I don't. I give an option. Yeah, I give an option. I usually will say, you know, in the introduction email that I generally get, you know, I'll usually say, look, I really like to meet in person, but I understand, you know, people can get very busy with kids, careers, you know, so forth. And about three out of 10 times, probably we meet. And that's fine. I mean, it's just, you know, I mean, it is what it is, right? But you know, what we do is when I do meet, or frankly, if I do a call in, my first part has nothing to do with mortgages. I like to get to know somebody for a variety of reasons. Number one, you can make better decisions in terms of what product works for them, and the discussion of what you'd be talking with them about and recommending. But also, it really solidifies a relationship for a long period of time. And I think when you start to meet somebody and you know about them or their family or whatever it may be, you know, there'll always be this common ground where it's like, oh, that guy was really, you know, he was interesting to talk to, and many of your clients are interesting to talk to as well, right? Then what we do is then I'll find out about, you know, their finances, and you know, as we all know, we're professionals. Yes.
So before we get into the finance part, I want to unpack that personal connection, because I mean, that's something I've noticed. I mean, I've met you in person, and your presence is like, you are really, you know, curious and interested to know people, and I think that makes people like you. But if you could just give an example of some of the questions that you ask, and I'm sure you don't have a script that you read, but you probably have a number of questions that are not uncommon as you're building rapport and you're getting to know people. What are some of those questions?
Oh, I usually ask them their background, you know, where they went to school, what they studied, if they did, right? I kind of ask them what their goals are in life, what they like, what their hobbies are. I ask them what they think, you know, 10 years from now, where they're going to be in their life, what in a perfect world, where would they be? And then, you know, usually once they will tell you what they're interested in, you can develop an incredible rapport based on that. I mean, I remember the first time when you and I met, you were explaining that your son is a prolific lacrosse player.
Well, let's not use the word prolific. He works hard. He's a hard-working lacrosse player.
Right. So So, my kids are on the other side of my kids work hard at playing soccer. And despite there being different sports, you probably, and well, I know you do, you go through the same scheduling conflicts and your same commitment level that I do. Those type of things really really cause me to remember what somebody's interested in. I enjoyed with you. I could see that your face lit up when you were talking about your son. That's a really cool thing for somebody to see. Those type of things, I'm looking for little signs of items like that. And I'm also, so in your situation, if I happen to meet with you, I would be thinking, okay, how many children? If you're into, you obviously you have a level of commitment for your son's skill, and what happens if he goes away to school? Well, what happens to your house where you are? Would you consider? I think of all those things, right? So all of a sudden, it's like, hey, what would you do? Would you rent this house 10 years from now, or would you move? Where's your son going? I'm sure you want to spend a lot of time going to some of his games. For us, we thought, depending on where my kids end up or do, our thought was, hey, maybe I end up, having a second place somewhere, right? Those type of things start to go in, and then you think of the mortgage process, and, do you want to put more down? Maybe you save money aside to help you get the second home that you may go to, spend the next couple of years with your kid, or, all those things start to enter. But what it does is it creates this level of remembrance. You've etched yourself in my mind in a specific way. And so when I talk to you, when your first call comes in and you have a question, it isn't only mortgage related, and I'm all of a sudden like this, like a taskmaster. It's, oh, hey, how'd the game go? Great, good, and then we can get into it. It just develops something that I had to go for my daughter. Her teacher asked me to go speak at her school about, career day or whatever. They want to try to give you an idea of what you need to do to prepare to actually be an adult, which I think schools do a very poor job of. And so when I went there, they were asking me, what do you think the greatest thing that you could do to be successful? And I think the greatest thing that anybody could do in life is to realize that if you can relate to every type of person, then you'll be successful at whatever you do.
Wow, I love that. How much time do you spend in calling it getting to know people at a level much bigger than a mortgage? How much time do you think you spend on that conversation when you meet with people?
It's
and you could
80-20.
answer it both, but how much? Like, give me a guesstimate on the minute. How many minutes?
Well, if I have an hour meeting, I would say that a good 45 minutes might be spending getting to know people, because then the next transition is I'm going to do, based on what you said, my next step is I'm going to send you this tool called Mortgage Coach, and what I want you to do is review it, take a look at it based on what we've talked about for the next 20 minutes of our meeting, and then we're going to send this over to you, and we're going to then have another call or meeting, and we're going to sit down and go over what this is.
So, and is that time different whether someone's in person or whether you're on the phone? Do you always schedule 1 hour first meeting consultation?
Oh, no,
it's how you will?
Yeah, I don't. It's whatever we go. We've had, you have some meetings that are short, but we've had meetings that go well over an hour because we happen to, a lot of my business comes from, playing basketball and, my kids playing sports and doing that. So a lot of times, your 40 minutes of personal talk go off on a tangent, because then you end up knowing somebody who knows somebody, and, you laugh about stories and so a lot of times it's meeting somebody over a beer type of deal,
Yeah.
But I have no time restrictions. My time isn't that important that I can't give somebody more than an hour if they need, right?
Got it. Well, I do want to make sure everybody connects it out. Here's a guy that's doing a lot of volume, and so he's busy. He doesn't have extra time, but yet he's spending time to get to know everybody that he talks to. And just knowing you, it's like the Joe P. X factor. You personally connect with people. You sincerely like people. You're curious about them. So I just want everybody to take a note from that. and kind of think about, do you know the 10-year goals of the families that you serve, and if you don't, maybe you should. You could spend more time with people and close even more loans than you're already closing. Also, if anybody wants to share, I would love to know, on average, how much time you're spending getting to know people beyond just the transaction. So share in questions, how many minutes out of the time you're with a client are you spending outside of the transactional conversation, but getting to know that family, hobbies, background, where do they want to be in 10 years? Now let's talk transaction. How many minutes are you spending on that? I would love to get some feedback from the community on that. So Joe, I interrupted you a little bit of a segue, but I think it was an important one. Let's get into you were transitioning to the transaction part of the conversation. Give us a feel for how, we know that it's 20% of the time you're on the phone or in person, but what does that sound like? And I do want to get a script of how do you position Mortgage Coach with the family so that by the time they get it, they're fired up about it. They're like, I'm going to click on that. I'm excited.
Well, I think, from our transactional side, then, I kind of feel sorry for Nicole in this, my assistant, but, I like to deliver the good news, and then Nicole delivers like, hey, we need more documentation news. She doesn't particularly care for that. But, I think when I'm going through the situation, at that last 20 minutes, I really know what direction we're going to go, clearly. This job isn't that difficult, or, there are a ton of options available. But, as my client base has changed somewhat, I think there are, while the products themselves aren't different, the presentation and options can be different. Meaning, my meeting that I just had was a matter of, okay, let's take a look at 3.5, 5, 10, 80, 10, 10. Those type of things you can sit down where they had 10% available but only felt they'd be in the house 5 years. Those type of scenarios can be, I wouldn't say earth-shattering. That's probably overestimating what I'm saying, but they're major decisions, and when someone looks at them, and if their ratios are in line and the payment is where they want, the difference between a 3.5% down product here and a 10% down product can be literally the difference in being able to buy the fixer-upper and remodeling it with the difference. So that, again, it's just something that that presentation goes beyond mortgage talk, goes beyond interest rates, goes beyond everything that you kind of compete with a big bank for, and you're able to differentiate yourself, with Mortgage Coach being an easy illustrator of what you're trying to get across. As you and I discussed earlier, if you sit down with somebody and start talking about numbers, and again, we do this every day, so talking about numbers and what we do is a different language. But we go through this and, let's do this 3.5 and mortgage and upfront, and you get done with this, you probably have really gone past their level of knowledge, and you're at some point they're really not getting it. What Mortgage Coach does is it allows you to illustrate concepts and then implement the concepts through an easy to understand guide, right? And when you do that, your benefit, or what you're trying to sell yourself, what you do and how you could be of benefit to somebody, is cemented. I always like, it's, when we say we give the Mortgage Coach, we go through the options, and someone's like, oh my God, why would I ever do more than that? It's that moment where it's the end. You just finished the book. It's done, right? That person now is going to be your client for life, and everybody they know, they're going to sit down and say, wow, this, yeah, whatever, you can go try to, shop everywhere to save an eighth, but look what I just did. And that's how you get, I think in this market, in this changing market where there's so many different ways for somebody to try to get a mortgage quote, I think that's the way that you differentiate yourself in terms of what you do.
Yeah, no, I obviously agree with you.
Right.
I think when it comes to quoting rates and fees, I'm showing on the screen right now, a fee worksheet is not a great prop or visual representation of a strategy, a mortgage strategy. Or let's face it, every time you're meeting with a family, it's a story. They come into your office and the story starts with purchase options before they found a house and put it in escrow. But let's face it, the story changes. What house and what price and what down payment changes. And then when they put it into escrow, there's another chapter to the story. And, what's on the screen right now is just, there's a more efficient way to explain a strategy and tell a story than that. So, again, loving the fact that you're using Mortgage Coach. I do want to launch a poll real quick. I want to know, folks that are on this call, where are you at with the total cost analysis? How many are you creating? If the answer is what is a TCA, that means that you're really new to Mortgage Coach. If you've done less than 20, that means you really haven't, mastered the data entry and call it Mortgage Coach 101. If you're in the 20 to 100, I'd call that kind of Mortgage Coach 102. You're getting there. And then if you're north of 100, you are a power user. If you're north of 500, we consider you a mentor in our community. I mean, you've served 500 plus families with a total cost analysis. By the way, this is pretty cool. So by the way, only 37% of you voted. If you could, I'm just going to give you one more minute. I really like to get this number up to 70%. So it's kind of statistically valid of who's on the call. Again, folks, the way you get the most value from attending a Mortgage Coach call is participating. Hopefully you're not multitasking. Hopefully you're really listening to what Joe has to say. And please participate in the survey. All right. So here's how everybody answered it. Joe, check it out. I think you can see it. 5% aren't using it at all, and 5% are killing it. I do want to ask one more question because I want to get a feel for the production level of everybody on the call. And again, this is not public information. This is anonymous, but let us know where you're at in terms of your loan production. Are you closing less than 3 loans a month, 4 to 8, 8 to 15, killing it with 16 to 20, and are you just, completely crushing it with 21 plus units? We've got about 50% of you who have voted. Come on, guys, let's give me a quick click here so we have an idea of the volume of loans that everybody on this call is doing. So we've got almost 20% of the audience is in the 9 to 15. So that's kudos. And we've got, about 30% that are less than 3. And then, that's pretty representation of our Mortgage Coach community. Thank you for voting. So Joe, I don't know, do you have any comments or thoughts just on how people responded to those surveys?
No, I mean, I think everybody has a different level of what success is, right? I mean, I think, it's hard to gauge based on, length of time in this business. I mean, I think this would be, one of the more difficult industries to get into and really grow quickly. In comparison of when I got in, right? I think when I got in, certainly things were easier, and look, if you're doing 3 units, that's darn good, right? I mean, depending on how long you've been doing it, and to each his own.
Yeah,
as long as you enjoy what you're doing, right?
I'm not going to be so nice because I don't meet a lot of loan officers that are doing less than 3 that are happy with that number. And to your point, depending on how long they've been doing it, but I interviewed a guy, and again, I'm not saying everybody should be this guy, but I interviewed a young loan officer. He was a fireman prior to this year, and this year is his first year as a full-time loan officer who's going to, he's going to do $40 million this year. And again, I'm not here to say that's the success people should have, because I'm with you. Who am I to judge what success is to you? And if you're happy, then hugs, because you know what? Sometimes I've been ridiculously successful and not happy, and and vice versa. So if you're happy,
I think
it's all good. But
you make a good point, though. I mean, if you're, again, I mean, I look at if you're a firefighter or we're a firefighter, you have a unique group of peers that you have immediate credibility with, right? I think that's an important thing that people kind of forget, and sometimes you don't want to, bother people with telling them what you do, but you miss a lot of things, a lot of referral sources in specific groups. Like to me, going into a mortgage group really does nothing for me in many aspects, because it's just my peers or people in my same industry. But I mean, I look again between the basketball community and the soccer community. That's probably my largest portion outside of referral sources. My largest portion of business, because I immediately relate to somebody in a non-confrontational, accepting way. So you've got to use that to get your business, right? You don't have to be, hey, this is what I do, this is what I do, this is what I do. But I think you need to make them aware of what you do, because all of a sudden it starts coming to you. It's amazing.
yeah, no doubt. So hey, let's go down a little bit of a rabbit trail there, because I think that's important, because for all the folks that are, say closing less than 3 loans a month, or you're just not hitting your goals. I mean, if your goal is 8 loans a month and you're doing 5, let's, one, I can't tell you enough that I interview enough of the best loan officers in America that you do need to implement the total cost analysis with every family. And every family wants it, deserves it. It's just a question of how you present it in a way that has context. And Joe said something really important earlier. It's like you need to be able to relate to everybody, and that will kind of dictate your success in life. And that's kind of like, you need to know how to deliver the mortgage coach report to everyone, because, how the engineer wants it delivered is different than the first-time home buyer that barely qualifies. But they both could benefit from you giving them an illustration that demonstrates how they're going to build wealth with real estate, and it gives them clarity around their decision. So it's just a question of how you do it. So I do want to come and go drill down on that a little bit more, but I want to do a quick rabbit trail, because you made a good point that you've got 2 communities there where a lot of your loans come from outside of your referral partners. So we got Realtors, and then you got the soccer community, and you have the basketball community. I want to know a little bit more about how you do that. Like, how do you get those referrals but not be the annoying mortgage guy asking for leads? And then while you're answering that, I want to know if you're on this call and you have a community of people that you're getting a lot of referrals from, whether that's school, church, country club, share other, call it local networking, that you're doing and getting a lot of business. Share who it is. And then if you could just speak to a little bit about your approach with getting referrals from, those communities that you just mentioned. Joe?
Go. Oh, me? I'm sorry. I thought you were talking to the community. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
yeah, well,
look,
yeah.
what I enjoy most about, my friends and I always joke, but what I enjoy most about basketball is you can generally tell if you like somebody within literally 10 minutes of playing with them. All right. So, I mean, I think it's a good character reference, but I just, as I've played in so many leagues and over the years, and again, it's you build up this community, and I think it's just, you just overhear something, and you're like, hey, listen, this is kind of my advice, or, you just, again, it's just a matter of you're building your brand without having to say anything, just by being present and being a nice person, right? I mean, it's no different. You're relating to people. It's just easier to relate to people that have common interests, right? But what I find is where, like, a business group differs in that everybody wants something from somebody. This is everybody needs something and probably wants something, but it's just more in a more relaxed environment. And again, you just have a different level of trust.
Got it. Let's talk about how you intentionally get referrals from realtors, and how you integrate your total cost analysis into the realtor conversation. Because I remember when you were telling me, you and I did a couple Skype interviews, and I think the first one we had was, how you're using Mortgage Coach with realtors. So if you could just kind of speak to how you integrate it into your partner conversation.
Well, again, it's something that differentiates me from their old referrals, frankly. A lot of the real estate agents here try to use, or at times use, a big bank, most of the time that being just an order taker, and they really weren't feeling that there were options available. So they were having either A, a stressful experience in terms of closing the loan, or B, they just didn't feel like they were getting the most out of what they were referring. And what I mean by that is, remember, what we do is so reflective on them. So if they refer us and we blow the deal, well, you're never going to get another referral, but you also make them look bad, right? Why would you send me to that guy, right? I mean, that's the response. We've all been referred somebody who's not very good, and you're like, why would you use that person, In this instance, if you do something that's over the top and not having to be, super. I mean, it's very easy to be over the top using Mortgage Coach because it's just something different, and what you're doing is you're giving alternatives. But not only that, at times, I think you and I had spoken about this previously, where we had a deal where the appraisal missed, and one of the options that we had presented was FHA, and we were able to jump into FHA to save the deal for the realtor. Double-ended deal. I mean, it was a very it was an important deal to that person, and being able to fix things, and Mortgage Coach helped us through that because we were able to show, look, you're pretty much getting the same deal that you were getting. It just, we had an appraisal issue, and that they just could not bring it in value by $10,000, which would have killed the deal. Again, it just is one more thing to set the hook with your referral source. It's just one more thing that makes you different than somebody else. And that's what I like about it.
What's the conversation sound like? Like when you are explaining the total cost, first of all, do you call it total cost? Do you call it Mortgage Coach?
I call it Mortgage Coach.
What does that sound like? Give us a script. Like, let's get a script out of you. Even though I know you don't like scripts, but I want to hear what that conversation sounds like.
Okay, let's go through. I think you and I were talking about. I have a client who is actually a professional basketball player overseas, and we were going through all the scenarios, which is very, very interesting job situation. And we have a number of clients who've done this, and they've played overseas, and it's the transition back to the States when that happens, because obviously that's a career that isn't, that Mortgage Coach was go through a variety of options that hit the goals in terms of what they figured their monthly payment would be, hit their goals in case they had to go to another country to play and needed now all of a sudden to rent this place out, also hit their goals in terms of what they needed in terms of money set aside in case it takes a little bit of time. So that was the script. The script was, okay, let's sit down and go over the next 5 to 10 years not knowing where you're going to be. And we ended up going with a minimum down payment FHA option because the number fit perfectly for everything that could happen, and it set aside a nice slush fund for them in case reentry was a little difficult. Hello?
Yeah, didn't realize I had it on mute. Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries.
So again, remember everybody, if you do have questions for Joe, feel free to post those in the questions. A couple of people did ask, what does it sound like when you're having that conversation with a borrower? You know, we gave you some scripting with what you say and how you frame it with a realtor. What does it sound like with the borrower?
In terms of my conversation with a borrower?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's you know, I think that
as it pertains to mortgage coach, the total cost conversation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's what sets up mortgage coach to me with my conversation with a borrower is the first 45 minutes of my conversation of getting to know how I want to present the mortgage coach. So I don't necessarily have a script per se of how we do it because it varies so much in what I'm trying to describe. I mean, I think right now the biggest thing for me, and again with my paradigm shift in terms of clientele, if I look at where my biggest where mortgage coach gives me the biggest advantage in my explanation is, again, minimizing down payment versus maximizing, right? And I'm talking about let's say in most instances where I find it most beneficial, and I've said this a number of times, so forgive me for repeating myself, but that 3.5% down versus a 7 to 8% down deal, if you could sit there and illustrate that and then show them that they're going to have money left over and we can credit a large portion of closing costs, that type of conversation is the absolute pressure release valve for someone buying a home. Because what's the fear of anybody buying a home is like, I'm going to exhaust all of my resources, and it may be market specific for here, but it's so intense to get a property here, just to get something approved, that someone's like, oh my God, I'm going to get in this house and I'm not even going to have money to pay for new carpet. What I'm trying to do, and the way I use Mortgage Coach, is to show that, look, keep money aside. If you can keep money aside and it works, it's been the difference for us in terms of people getting properties or just bailing on this market. So just imagine what that does now for your real estate agent when someone said, this is too daunting, I'm going to wait. Hey, call this guy and just sit down with him. And then all of a sudden, 30 days later, they have a house and your realtor closed a deal that someone was said they were going to wait 6 months, right? I mean, it's a pretty powerful resource, and makes you really a valuable asset now, right? Maybe invaluable.
Absolutely. So let's see what questions we have from the community. Let's see. I have someone that wants to know what CRM that you use. What do you use for your CRM?
Outlook is all I use, and then we use Nexus. We use Nexus through our RPM.
Yeah, your corporate platform.
Right.
And any other technology that you're using aside from Mortgage Coach, your LOS, and Outlook for your CRM? Anything else?
No. I like to I like to go through our Nexus, and I like to actually, I mean, I know it's probably an easier way for people to do this, but I like to just go through and actually scroll down loans that we've done and see. So what I'll do is I'll concentrate on FHA, or I'll concentrate on 80-10-10s in areas that I know, like if I do a loan in an area that I'm like, wow, my God, that price is really high for that area, then I'll go back and look at that zip code and say, okay, how many loans did we do in there? And do we do any 95s, any 90? I mean, I look at just opportunities there. And the worst case is you may not be able to do anything, but people are like, wow, that guy's looking out for me, and I didn't know my house went up that much, right? So the realtor benefits too.
Yeah, no doubt. Someone just asked if you run credit reports before your initial consultation.
I usually will get, if they have a credit report that they've run, I usually have them bring that in, because I don't really know what their timing is, right? So oftentimes, if it's a first-time buyer and their credit score is somewhat at risk, I fear running it initially, right, until I talk to them.
Got it. I got some pretty detailed questions I'm going to try to get to. Can you give me what tools you'd use in this market to garner San Diego sales through? Yeah, some of these questions I'm not gonna, they're just a little too detailed. Keep asking questions, so if you have more questions, please let us know. In terms of prospecting time, how much time do you spend just kind of proactively reaching out to, whether that's past clients, friends, realtors, how do you make sure that you're always reaching out, or have you just built so many relationships and you've planted so many seeds that the phone rings and you just go from meeting to meeting? If you can speak to that.
I think if you were to ask me like strengths and weaknesses, I think my weakness is probably the prospecting side, and I think the weakness was born in the fact that I've maybe I've done, I don't know really how I would quantify or qualify, but I've done a good job of having that situation where the phone rings, right? But I think, again, in this market, and I have realized this in the past year, to quote the great Tom Petty, you can't sit around and wait for the phone to ring, right? You need to go out and do different things. I think I've been going to my signings. I've been a little more proactive in realtor events. I did some open houses for newer realtors. Not that I enjoyed doing that, but just to let them know I'm kind of on their side, right? But I've been doing it so long that just a simple, I know this is crazy, but like we send out a happy birthday announcement or card. It's crazy, man, that people actually, they love that. I think I'm not a big social media guy, but what I do every morning is I'll log on to Facebook and just look at everybody's birthday, and I just wish people happy birthday. It's amazing that I'm dreading birthdays now, but people love their birthday, and that's been something that's just so simple, and I think Facebook has I think it's made it, I think social media has made it so much easier to what you call prospect, which has always been in my mind just being that being a friend and a mortgage person, right? I just get daunted with social media because I just can't stand all the political posts. But so I kind of stay off it just for mental stability. But I always try to I'll leaf through real quickly just to see if there's an event happening for somebody, a birth, marriage, whatever it may be. But that's really my prospecting. It's just kind of always being around. I'm always available. Even if I go somewhere, I'll always have my phone on. I'll always be quick to respond.
Love it. Well, hey, man, this has been a great conversation. I think hopefully people come to this realizing that, you know what, your perfect loan process and the experience you create for people can just fund all types of success. I mean, when you look at the huge success that Joe has, and, you know, while I am a proponent of leveraging technology wisely, you know, I guarantee he has a CRM that he uses. So he uses it, you know. Do I recommend that you use Outlook as your CRM? No, I think there are better ways to automate a client for life, but look at the success he's having, because I know he uses it. He looks at it. He's intentional. Again, he is using Mortgage Coach to deliver that perfect experience. And so if you have a great, perfect process and you're connecting with people in a great way, you can kill it in this business. So do let us know what you thought of today's conversation in terms of the value we delivered and the takeaways you got. Love to know what takeaways you got once we upload this online. We'll share that with you. Joe, any last words of wisdom before we wrap up today's call?
No, just good luck, everybody. I just hope everybody does very, very well, and say a prayer for all the people in Las Vegas.
That is for sure, my friend. All right, man. Well, hey, thank you very much.
All right.
Appreciate your time today.
All right,
Hope
Dave.
everybody
Take
got
care,
a lot of value.
All right. Thanks.